This story begins with several system windows informing citizens about a series of anomalous events occurring around the world. A giant abalone was reported found by fishermen on the coast, so immense that not even 10 people could surround it, suspected to be a mutation caused by nuclear wastewater. There was also information about an ancient tree in a tourist area growing wildly, spreading its roots for kilometers, and cracks appearing in the ground due to a possible abnormal earth pulse. The notifications continued with giant vines falling from the sky, making fairy tales real, and with news that subway tracks had been destroyed in multiple places, resulting in some casualties. No one paid attention since they knew all this was nothing more than a bunch of sensationalist headlines, not very different from the false alarm about the zombie bite years ago. Many students were gathered in front of the school, considering that local rumors were much more interesting than the news. Suddenly, their attention was completely diverted to the figure approaching. It was the beauty of the school, Chu Ching Lee. Immediately, the crowd wondered if she was finally about to break up with her boyfriend. According to them, the relationship was nothing more than an act of charity on her part. Chu Ching Lee had already been accepted into Chingchong University, while her boyfriend hadn't even managed to get into a decent university. Because of this, their futures were on completely different levels. Chu Ching Lee approached Fong Yi and called his attention. Fong Yi turned around somewhat curious. With a cold expression, she explained that she had thought it over, and their relationship wasn't realistic. School-time love always reached a point where one wakes up and realizes they are not meant for each other. A life together, according to her, required not only courage but also compatibility. For all this reason, it was best to end things. She thought with disdain that no matter what he tried to win her back, it would be impossible. Fong Yi remained silent, and noticing this, people thought his lack of reaction was because he was so shocked that he had collapsed or lost his mind. After all, she was the beauty of the school. They expected him to be on his knees begging for another chance. However, upon observing him, they simply concluded that he was no match for a rich and beautiful girl, a toad who coveted a swan. With a calm gaze, Fong agreed to break up with her, leaving Chu Ching Lee and the others in shock. Seeing that she had nothing more to say, our boy turned his back on her and decided to leave. She panicked and called out to him. With a piercing gaze, Fong Yi turned around and asked what she wanted. While her eyes were shining with rage, she made it clear that she didn't care what he was thinking or what tricks he would use. She wasn't going back with him, and she wanted this to be completely clear. Fong Yi began to stare at her and asked her not to flatter herself, calling her the school beauty. Upon hearing this, her eyes widened in surprise, making her blush. The others were in shock at Fong Yi's attitude. Fong Yi was aware that Chu Ching Lee and the others had no idea what was about to happen. He knew that society's current rules, like money and education, would soon turn to ashes. They were unaware that he had returned from a future disaster, a man reborn in this timeline. Because of this, the Chu Ching Lee before him was, to him, simply a distant stranger from another life. Fong Yi left the school. He had more important matters to attend to. For him, school beauties and reputation were irrelevant since everything was about to be completely reconfigured. The real crisis was one looming over all humanity on Blue Star. It all began the night before when Fong Yi woke up and some strange cracks showed him the future, and then the system informed him that an aura recovery had been detected. This full activation would take place in March. And once this happened, the world would undergo an unprecedented transformation. Fong Yi was somewhat confused. Several figures appeared in front of him, and the system revealed that society's rules would be rewritten. The era of cultivators was about to arrive and power would become the new standard. Our boy felt somewhat curious, extended his hand and asked who it was. Then a strange light began to appear in front of him. A system window appeared, explaining that it came from the confines of the universe and used top-tier algorithms integrated with cosmic secrets. Its function was to automatically generate cultivation techniques based on spiritual materials touched by the host, showing that current techniques were zero. Fong Yi began to extend his hand, and his eyes widened in surprise as his hand passed through the system window. Then a powerful monster emerged and began to roar. Fong Yi was paralyzed, and his eyes filled with fear. Inside the monster's mouth was a corpse, and the system revealed that this was his end as an ordinary person, as well as the fate of billions on Blue Star. Fong Yi swallowed saliva and could not help but feel afraid. He put his hand over his chest and his eyes filled with worry. Fong Yi began to ponder and remembered his past life. He had been just an average person, swept along by the tide of events, struggling only to survive with the hope of overcoming the disaster. However, he witnessed the fall of his nation and the suffering of the people, and in the end, he could not escape from the mutated beasts. He remembered dying in despair, full of rage, and with a deep desire for revenge. His eyes began to shine with determination as he thought that perhaps this was why he had been chosen by the system and brought back 1 year before the recovery of Aura. He began to extend his hand, knowing that, at this moment, most people had no idea about the change that was coming. Fong-yi touched the fragments of the system and decided that he would use each anomaly caused by the aura to his advantage. The system began to initialize a new evaluation. The eyes of our boy began to shine as the system informed him that it had been successfully linked. A new path had been unlocked, and now everything in existence could be used as material. His mission was to collect powerful techniques and abilities to become a strong cultivator and save the world. In the city, people were informed that humanity now faced an unprecedented crisis. Answers could not be found in the past. The only option was to adapt with their own strength. Everyone was surprised except Fong-yi. When he turned on his phone, he saw several notifications. He understood that the government neither confirmed nor denied the strange phenomena, limiting itself to telling people to prepare. This, he knew, was nation's subtle way of issuing a warning, since reports once considered mythical nonsense would never have gone viral in this way. His eyes filled with sadness as he began to remember the past. He knew that this indirect and silent approach by Xia Nation helped citizens remain calm and trust their country. It was a hard and slow method, but much more effective than the chaos and gunfire of neighboring nations. Then he remembered that the system had told him that he could use anything, which meant that he should go wherever anomalies occurred. His attention was fixed on the phone. It was the #1 trending news. The UV index at Chingcheng University had reached a historic record of the century. Because of this, a heat warning had been issued, urging new students to take safety precautions and use sunscreen. The students were somewhat confused as they thought that even the best universities now resorted to sensationalist advertising. They considered this false, definitely a paid topic to be trending, since heat of that magnitude could kill people. Fong-yi looked up at the sky and saw that it was full of clouds, then activated the UV meter and saw that it was at 0. He was somewhat confused as he didn't understand how the weather could be so different, since Chingcheng University was only 15 minutes away by car. Images of a blazing sun above the university were published, and students were informed that new student registration would continue, but they should avoid the north gate due to the high UV index, as all other entrances remained open. Fong-yi couldn't help but smile. He knew that when anomalies occurred for the first time, most people only thought it was a publicity stunt, and only he knew the truth. His eyes began to shine with joy as his first opportunity had arrived. Fong-yi changed clothes and went to Chingcheng University. Everyone was carrying umbrellas. It was so hot that the leaves of the trees had fallen. Our boy went to the north gate of Chingcheng University, the least crowded of all. He knew that something was definitely wrong in this place. Shiny ashes began to descend from the sky. While students were fleeing to avoid being scorched to death, Fong-yi's attention was fixed on it. He sat down and decided to touch it. Once his finger made contact, an intense glow began to emerge from it, and the system reported that it had detected an intense fluctuation in the yang attribute, unlocking the data template of it. The energy began to enter Fong-yi's body, causing him terrible pain. An intense glow began to emerge from our boy's body. People covered their eyes to avoid going blind. They didn't know what was happening and thought they were hallucinating. The energy started burning Fong-yi's clothes, making him clench his teeth tightly. He put his hands on top of his head and started going crazy, not knowing if the system had finished compiling. He felt like he was about to die. The compilation was completed, and Fong-yi acquired a yang attribute technique, the golden sun breathing technique. Later, it's the day for new students to register at Chingcheng University. Our main character's ex-girlfriend arrives at the registration area. A guy offers to carry her suitcase for her. Soon, more guys come over to try and get her attention, but she turns them all down, telling them she doesn't need their help. She looks over at a couple nearby with a sneer, but then a bright golden light flashes, surprising her and the other students. A voice on the loudspeaker tells everyone to stay away from the north gate. The girl looks serious and decides to go see what is happening. At the north gate, a huge burst of golden energy lights up the area. A dark figure appears from the smoke, giving off a powerful feeling. He takes a deep breath and his eyes glow with a strong golden light. A screen pops up telling him that he has created a new technique and earned 50 points. The guy looks at the screen and wonders what the points are for. He decides it's not important right now, but will probably be useful later. Time passes, and it is now night with a strange-looking moon in the sky. The young man then starts to practice his new breathing technique. The next day, a bright sun is in the sky, and a new energy spreads through the university. Some students notice the sky get dark and cool for a second as they run to the north gate. A large crowd gathers there to see what is going on. The university's dean is angry and asks why no one listened to the warning to stay away. The group pushes through the crowd, which moves aside for them as they go to the center of it all. A hooded person with a serious look tells the dean to block off the north gate completely. At that moment, a system tells Fong Yi that he has cleaned a polluted area. He learns that the government already knows about these areas and wonders if there are other people like him. Hearing an alert about people not being allowed in the area, the young man knows things have gotten serious. The students see people in uniforms and wonder if they are from the army. From a rooftop, Fong Yi sees that the disturbance is getting a lot of attention. With his red eyes glowing, he decides it's time to leave and jumps off the building. Down below, the mysterious hooded person walks across the ground, which is cracked from the energy. The hooded figure looks carefully at the scene. This person kneels and touches the ground to feel for any remaining energy. Then she picks up a piece of the ground to get a closer look at what happened. The hooded figure studies it and realizes a person caused the energy. Just then, officials begin moving the students out while the person in the hood watches from far away. In the crowd, the guy's ex-girlfriend is shocked to hear that only one person did this. At that moment, she sees a figure jumping away and wonders if it was her ex, but she quickly pushes that thought away. With his grades, he could never get into this school. Far away at Fongis House, the sun goes down and night falls. Lying on his bed, the young man complains that his body is still hot even after a cold shower. Because of the heat, he's afraid he won't get any sleep. He also worries that because of what happened today, someone might have noticed him. He then picks up his phone and sees a popular news story about a cultivation association. The young man remembers that everyone used to think it was just a joke on the internet. Just then, he remembers the hooded people at the university and thinks they must be from the association. Curious, he opens the news story to read the whole article. It explains the different cultivation levels from ghost acts to total transcendence. In the comments, people think it's a joke, but he wonders if the announcement is real. Fong Yi thinks about how he never knew any of this in his past life as a normal person. Sitting on his bed, he thinks about the cultivation association and decides to try his technique again. He closes his eyes and focuses to start his training. In that moment, he begins to sweat as a strong golden energy flows around him. He starts to float in his room surrounded by a bright golden glow. A light shines on him. The first step is to strengthen his body to hold the power of heaven and earth. He successfully controls the energy and shapes it into a divine axe. His eyes glow brightly, and he smiles, feeling full of power. The system tells him he has reached the Duchoi's level and gives him 50 more points. The guy remembers the points and reads the screen, which says a new path is now open. The system explains that the points can be used to put the compiled data into any object. He thinks about the idea of putting power into an object and looks at his mug on the table. He holds his hand out toward the mug with a golden glow of power. The system asks if he wants to use 1 point to put the yang attribute on the mug. He realizes this is like enchanting an item to give it a special power. The young man thinks that if he did this to a weapon, it would become his own special item for fighting. He decides that having a powered-up weapon will be very important for what is to come. The guy then finds a small sword on his shelf and decides to try the power on it. He thinks that if the test works, he will buy a real weapon to be ready for the monsters. Suddenly, a strange noise from outside the building gets his attention in the middle of the night. Outside, a dark creature with huge claws is watching Fong Yi's apartment. With glowing red eyes, the strange creature shows its sharp teeth in the darkness. It looks like a giant demonic rabbit and gets ready to attack the building. But inside the apartment, the guy has no idea that danger is coming. Lying in bed, the guy feels uncomfortable from his new cultivation technique. With his red eyes, he wonders where the sound, which was like a rat, came from. He thinks the sound is not from inside or from the pipes, and it might be a neighbor's pet. Walking through the living room, he thinks that with his better hearing, it is normal to hear the neighbors. Then the guy focuses his hearing to listen more carefully to the strange sound, but he soon realizes something is wrong and becomes alert. Fong Yi goes to the door and comes face to face with the scary creature right there in the dark hallway. In the hallway, the strange creature with red eyes appears and glares at him, ready to attack. He is startled and recognizes the mutated beast. A memory from his past life scares him. At the same time, a drone flies over the city at night, showing that others know about the danger. On top of a building, a girl complains that they still have not caught the rabbit that ate a rare fruit. With a lollipop in her mouth, the young woman seems very calm and confident about the mission. She then orders her team to keep sending her updates about the target she is hunting. After that, the mysterious girl jumps from the top of the building to begin the chase. Falling very fast, she moves with ease between the huge city buildings. Suddenly, the young woman feels the mutated beast's power and realizes she is getting closer to it. With her eyes glowing, she finally finds the creature and gets ready for a fight. The mysterious hunter lands hard on a rooftop, moving with amazing skill. Running down the side of a building, she gets the order to chase the target no matter what. With a perfect landing, the young woman continues her chase without stopping. Jumping from building to building, she warns that the creature ate a special fruit and might evolve. Just then, a man working late sees something fast go by his window and is very confused. He wonders if he is seeing things, but his boss yells at him for just standing around. Meanwhile, the hunter stands like a shadow in front of the moon on the 65th floor. Back in the apartment, Fong Yi faces the strange creature, which screams at him. With his golden eyes, he knows his body has changed, and now he can fight it fairly. The creature then attacks with its claws, but the young man dodges with amazing speed. Fong Yi thinks that his body has really changed, and now he can see the attacks in slow motion. With sun energy in his hand, he wonders why a mutated beast is here so soon. He then remembers things from his past life and faces the monster. The guy knows the creature has not fully evolved yet, and the night makes it stronger and angrier. So he rushes forward to attack because he has to stop it or everyone in the building will die. Fong Yi manages to grab the creature with his hand full of energy. With surprising strength, the guy bites the strange creature without any fear. He holds the monster tightly and his golden eyes shine with a cold, focused look. Then the young man spins the creature in the air and realizes its tail is its weak spot. Taking his chance, he grabs the beast's tail with all his strength. Fong Yi throws the monster against the window and it shatters from the force. With his fist glowing gold, he gets ready to land a powerful punch. The guy shoots a beam of energy that hits the creature right in the air. The monster is then completely covered by the bright golden beam of light, but the strange creature grabs the golden energy with its claws and tries to take its power. Fong Yi then realizes the monster is trying to steal his yang power, and he fights back. He thinks the power of the sun is too strong and that the rabbit is just destroying itself. Soon after, a golden explosion covers the monster, which can't handle that much energy. In the building next door, a couple wakes up from the noise, and the man wonders if it was thunder. He then goes to the window to check, but sees nothing strange outside. Our hero lands on the floor surrounded by what is left of his golden energy. The young man thinks that the creature was like a starving ghost trying to eat his power. After the fight, the monster's eye falls to the floor, letting out a weird black smoke. With a serious look, he stares at what is left of the creature he just defeated. Without thinking twice, the guy stomps hard on the eye, crushing the rest of the beast. He understands that the creature of the night was desperate for his opposite yang-type power. The young man thinks that if he were normal, the monster would have easily eaten everyone in the building. With that, he knows he needs to learn more techniques to face the dangers ahead. Meanwhile, a mysterious girl jumps through the air in the moonlight looking like a hunter. With amazing speed, the young woman runs very fast down the side of a building. When she gets to the scene, the mysterious hunter's eyes open wide with shock. Standing there in the middle of the night, she wonders if someone else defeated her target. Kneeling on the ground, she notes that the target has been destroyed and that she will try to get the night attribute back. But as she touches the monster's remains, she is surprised by a golden energy that is still there. The young woman then feels a strong heat and a burning power that makes her pull back right away. The young woman remembers the energy from the university gate and understands that this is not a coincidence. After this discovery, the girl turns on her communicator with a serious and determined look. She tells her base that the target was taken out by a powerful new forerunner with a special ability. A voice on her communicator asks if the same person cleaned the gate and killed the rabbit. A man confirms they have no information on this person and that the association must recruit him. The silver-haired girl agrees with the plan. She then carefully puts the small flame of energy into a container on her clothes. Her boss tells her to stop her other missions and focus on finding the new forerunner. At that, the mysterious hunter calmly unwraps the lollipop she was holding. The young woman puts the candy in her mouth and says she understands the new order perfectly. But before she starts the mission, the girl says she first needs to get some milk tea to relax. A voice on the communicator wonders who this mysterious person with so much power could be. The young woman agrees that the president was right and that she needs to meet this powerful master. Fongis' day starts with the sunrise. He stretches, ready to train. He knows waking up early is good for his power, so he prepares for another session. The fighter uses his breathing method, taking in the morning's golden energy. As the energy fills him, his eyes glow with golden power. He enters the Ghost Axe realm and feels the technique's power appear. A sudden burst of energy surprises him. He realizes he's getting stronger again. Power flows through his body, and he focuses to control it. He makes a tight fist, feeling the energy now in his hand. He summons his key axe and sees that the weapon feels much lighter. He grips the weapon's handle firmly, ready to try out his new strength. The warrior lifts the golden axe over his head, preparing a powerful hit. He reaches the 2-star Ghost Axe realm, releasing his strength. His eyes now burn with golden flames, showing his new power. Fongis' body feels much stronger and tougher after this change. He grew stronger so fast because he used the extra energy from his last power-up. Fongis decides that from now on, he will level up slowly and carefully, one step at a time. But his growing power gets a lot of attention, so he needs a more private place. In the association's office, a man feels something strange in the air. He sees the change in the sun's energy and wonders if it's the new guy again. Fongis finds a quiet spot by a river to continue his plans. A system screen appears, and he confirms he will add a special quality to his weapon. He remembers trying this with another item, but it couldn't handle the power. This time, the new blade works with his energy, making a strong connection. A system message confirms the item encoding worked. Excited by his new weapon, he gets ready to test its amazing power right away. The test result shocks him with the incredible power the sword let out. A huge golden beam of light shoots from the blade into the sky. The warrior lands with his sword in flames, feeling the power flow through him. He almost starts a fire with that swing and sees how dangerous his strength is. The smoke from the attack is big, so he knows he was seen and needs to leave. A girl is running fast toward the smoke he left. She complains that she stepped away for a moment and missed everything. Suddenly, the young woman stops. She sees that the river is actually boiling. The agent flies over the damaged area, wondering what the new guy did to the place. She can already imagine being told off since everything has gone wrong since he appeared. Just then, a golden flash in the distance catches her eye, and she becomes curious. The hunter is shocked by what she senses. This shouldn't be possible. His power level jumped from 1 star to 2 stars, and he even made a spirit weapon. The association only has 2 of those weapons, and the way to make them isn't fully known. The girl gets suspicious, wondering how he got this kind of power by himself, but she thinks she must be wrong and decides to start cleaning up the mess he made. Far away, Fongis thinks about how his weapon now has the yang attribute, but he wants more. The system can encode anything, so he plans to add more qualities to the blade. Suddenly, his phone buzzes. He has a message from someone he doesn't know. He completely forgot about being private, and now a stranger is inviting him to a pioneers group. He's shocked to learn that official members must be at least Ghost Axe realm level. The stranger talks about a new pollution zone and invites him to a group hunt. He asks for the location, and the stranger sends a file about the lava dragon of the Shadow River. The zone has lava and the same yang attribute he has, so Fongis decides to accept the invitation. Far away in the Binmu district, a group is waiting for Old Lee's friend to arrive. One member says the girl's map was so good, he got there easily. The blonde girl thanks everyone for coming and tells them they need to work together. She is from the Cultivation Association and is disappointed that the pioneers here aren't very strong. What many don't know is that the Cultivation Association is a government group. Getting into the group was hard and required her family to ask for favors, so she hates to fail. Just then, one of the explorers sees the newbie arriving and calls him by his name, Fong. Fong Yi makes a strong entrance with his new sword and introduces himself to the group. The agent is startled by his power, but sees his aura isn't scary, but warm. Since the team is all there, the leader gives the signal and they go toward the cave entrance. Fong Yi decides to go first and asks the blonde agent to take care of the light. The group walks through the cave, and one of them warns Fong about the loose rocks. They think it's strange that the place isn't very hot yet. Fong Yi reflects on how quickly the team accepted him and feels that their friendship is real in these hard times. Fong Yi keeps moving forward and the ground under his feet starts to change color, showing that danger is near. Suddenly, they get to a huge opening and are amazed to see a river of boiling lava right in front of them. Without hesitating, Fong rushes toward the danger, and the blonde agent yells at him not to be so reckless. To everyone's surprise, the warrior pushes his sword right into the lava. The explorers panic and scream for help. A fiery explosion throws the team back, and Fong Yi's system detects a worldwide problem and starts to analyze the information. As he plunged his sword into the lava, Fong Yi's system analyzed the anomaly, revealing a new power, the inner flame with an extremely high internal temperature and explosive properties, and the scarlet flame sword technique, which unleashed its power when the blade was drawn, coating it in fire and lightning. Resolve, Fong Yi gripped his sword. His eyes and the blade glowed with fiery power, a perfect technique for his Tang sword. Below, the other explorers, thrown back by a previous explosion, watched in amazement as Fong Yi stood unharmed in a vortex of fire. Realizing his weapon was absorbing the lava's power, Fong Yi then used his script points to permanently embed the scarlet flame attribute into his sword, which now burned with energy. When the flames subsided, his teammates concluded he had suffered a small cultivation accident and had recovered. The group was euphoric, noticing the cave's spiritual energy had stabilized. One of them celebrated being able to absorb it smoothly, while another, on the verge of beginning his cultivation path, excitedly shouted Xiaoya's name. The blonde agent, Xiaoya, encouraged them to train while she kept watch, and the team thanked her for the opportunity. The peace was interrupted when Xiaoya detected figures approaching the entrance, warning that other pioneers were arriving. 3 muscular men entered, led by one with an eye patch and glowing red eyes who arrogantly declared the resource-rich land was now theirs. Xiaoyu grew worried, recognizing all 3 newcomers were at the 1-star Ghost Axe realm, a level her team couldn't challenge. Despite the danger, Xiaoya tried to reason with them, politely stating they had arrived first and even offering to let them join. Her diplomacy was met with contempt. The eye patch-wearing leader mocked her low level and ordered them to get lost or face the consequences. Xiaoyu's expression hardened. She reflected on the harsh reality of survival of the fittest in this new era, but as a member of the Xia Nations Association, she decided she couldn't allow this injustice. Just as the confrontation was about to escalate, Fong Yi stepped between Xiaoyu and the hostile leader. With his sword ignited, he coldly asked the large man if he had nothing better to do than bully a young woman. The eye patch-wearing leader was left stunned and speechless. Without hesitation, Fong Yi unleashed a single devastating swing that created a fiery explosion, sending the 3 aggressors flying. The force of the attack startled Fong Yi's own teammates from their meditation. He remembered the tragedies caused by those who followed principle, knowing only overwhelming force would work on such people. To make his point, Fong Yi drove his blade into the ground in front of the rival leader. Surrounded by an immense golden aura, he coldly ordered them to scram. Terrified by this second display of power, the leader called Fong Yi a monster and screamed for his men to run as Fong Yi watched them flee. His teammates rushed over, buzzing with excitement over his incredible power. Fong Yi smiled, brushing it off and suggesting it was time to leave. As they left, Xiaoyu contemplated the immense power Fong Yi had shown, realizing he had held back. Convinced he was a top-tier pioneer, she knew she had to report this major discovery to her organization immediately. The scene shifts to the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association office, where a woman on the phone with Xiaoyu repeated in surprise that another high-attribute pioneer had appeared. The office worker grew flustered, realizing she had said too much, especially with an imposing man standing behind her. She awkwardly hung up after confirming the report. The young woman cheerfully asked her gray-haired superior if they were lucky enough to have 2 high-attribute pioneers in a row. He, however, grimly corrected her that luck had nothing to do with it, explaining that every high-attribute individual is destined to become a new center of power, a responsibility that stressed him immensely. Under a sunny sky, Fong Yi returned to the city. He tried to disguise himself as a cosplayer, but his powerful presence and authentic sword only drew more attention. His walk was interrupted when he saw on his phone that news of the cave incident had already gone viral. He chided himself for his carelessness, knowing the eruption of his internal flame was too noticeable. Dismissing the idea that his teammates would betray him, he focused on a more urgent matter. The massive yang energy he had absorbed was pushing him toward a new breakthrough. He needed to find a secluded place immediately and headed for the back mountain. 5 minutes later, on that same mountain, a silver-haired young woman named Chu Ching Lee, a garden restoration expert, felt a sudden powerful presence. She saw an intense burst of light like a miniature sun and recognized the signs of a cultivator breaking through to the 3-star Ghost Axe realm. The scale of the energy astounded her. She'd never imagined a breakthrough of that realm could be so monstrous. Driven by a sense of duty and a flash of recognition, she raced toward the disturbance, vowing to catch the mysterious individual this time. High on the mountain, Fong Yi was focused on his breakthrough. He pulled in huge amounts of golden energy, which spun around him before forming a bright sun-like ball above his head. As he meditated in the air, the power behind him formed a complex star-shaped divine shape. Golden energy sparked across his skin, and his eyes glowed with great power as he tried to control the wild energy. Finally, the power came together, taking the shape of a giant divine axe made of pure golden and light blue energy crackling with power. Meanwhile, Chu Ching Lee arrived and stopped suddenly when she saw the amazing sight. She watched in total disbelief, seeing that the mysterious person was about to swing the divine axe he had just created. His level of control was incredible. She wondered how anyone could command so much spiritual energy with such perfect skill and steadiness, asking herself if this man had secretly been training for centuries. The sight brought back a painful memory. Chu Ching Lee remembered her own attempt to break through to the Ghost Axe 2-star level. The pressure from her own divine axe had been too much for her, pushing back and making her cough up blood. It left her stuck in bed for a full week. She was naturally strong, but she had still failed badly. She couldn't understand how this monster could handle a breakthrough that was so much more powerful than hers. As she ran closer, she was even more amazed. The huge amount of spiritual energy, the perfect control in every move of the axe, and the way every bit of power seemed to have been purified thousands of times, it was all beyond anything she had ever seen. She decided that this person wasn't just an amazing monster. He was like a god who had come down from the sky. She also noticed his calm and steady way of doing things. Most pioneers, when they felt a breakthrough was about to happen, would rush to get it done. This person, however, moved with a deep sense of experience and a strong mind, like a master from old times. Her thoughts were stopped when the giant fiery divine axe began to move. She watched the awesome sight as it swung with a purpose, heading east. At the peak of his power, Fong Yi's eyes burned with pure golden light as cracks of raw energy spread across his face. He floated inside a blinding storm of golden power, successfully controlling the huge amount of energy he had gathered to evolve. A system window then appeared, officially confirming he had succeeded. He had reached the Ghost Axe realm 2-star. The new divine axe slammed down into the earth, releasing all of its power in one huge shockwave that tore across the mountain. Chu Ching Lee was caught in the powerful blast and had to hold herself steady against the wave of golden energy. The leftover force cut a huge path through the forest before fading away, but when she looked up, the mysterious man had completely disappeared. Breathing hard from the effort and her frustration, Chu Ching Lee couldn't believe she had missed him again, especially since she had arrived in only 30 seconds. A worrying thought came to her. He must have known that she was tracking him. She worried that if he stayed this hard to find, her mission to recruit him would be impossible. Just as she was about to give up, she paused. A sudden idea hit her. She looked away from the path of destruction and toward a giant old tree that was now glowing with a soft, leftover golden light. With a new feeling of certainty, she called out into the woods that seemed empty, calling him senior and asking if he was still in the area. From the shadows of the forest, Fong Yi appeared, his hooded body giving off a cool confidence. His glowing red eyes were on Chu Ching Lee. He immediately knew she was the person who had been looking into him for the past few days. Seeing she had been found, Chu Ching Lee stood her ground and properly introduced herself. She said she was the captain of the Firefly Squad, a part of the Spiritual Practitioners Association of Xia Nation, and also one of the nation's first pioneers. On behalf of the association, she sincerely invited him to join them. She admitted she had been following him for 2 days and hoped her methods hadn't made him think badly of her. As she spoke, Fongis stayed quiet, and his face was hard to read under his hood. Chu Ching Lee added that while the public didn't know yet, all the official papers for the association were ready. Inside, however, she was very nervous, choosing her words carefully and worrying if she was bothering him or making the powerful man angry. She knew she had to sound soft and respectful. Her carefully planned speech was cut short by Fongis' simple direct question. Why should I join? The direct question surprised her completely. She stuttered for a moment, panicking over what to say. She quickly saw that empty nice words would be useless against someone so smart. The truth was her only choice. Pulling herself together, she explained what the association was for. She told him that the Xia nation wanted to gather and unite all the early pioneers to guide them on an organized path and also give them extra protection. She knew that growth was messy right now and that an association might feel like a cage to a free spirit like him, but she asked him to look at the bigger picture. A great return of spiritual energy was coming, and they would all need to stand together to face the unknown enemies of the future. After listening to her passionate speech, Fongis leaned casually against a tree looking tired and uninterested. He told her plainly that he was not willing to join. He explained that for now, he still couldn't bring himself to fully trust her or the association she represented. Chu Ching Lee was left completely stunned and speechless by his direct refusal, her eyes wide with shock. Facing his refusal, Chu Ching Lee grew desperate. She quickly pulled out her identification card from her jacket. Holding it up for him to see, she quickly introduced herself again as Chu Ching Lee and mentioned she used to be a well-known athlete before the spiritual energy returned. She begged him to believe her, hoping her public identity would give him a reason to trust her. Fongis paused and thought about her words. He touched his chin thoughtfully, saying that he now vaguely remembered her. His mind remembered a framed picture of her celebrating a victory as the runner-up in the Xia Nation's long-distance championship. He realized her natural athletic skill was what made her such a fast and good pioneer. However, his face then became hard. A dark memory from his previous life came to mind, showing a vision of a ruined city. He knew that, in his original timeline, the Xia Nation's work, including the association, had failed in the end, leading to the end of humanity. Now that he had returned with his system, he knew he had to be part of the solution, but joining the association at this point was not the right move. Putting on a more thoughtful look, he looked back at a hopeful Chu Ching Lee and confirmed that he did remember her. He told her he would think about her offer, and before she could answer, he jumped into the air and sped away from the spot. Just as quickly, he reappeared right behind a startled Chu Ching Lee. He gave her a firm condition. She must keep his location a secret from everyone for now. In his mind, he studied her respectful behavior and guessed that the association was careful about upsetting powerful pioneers who weren't with them. He saw this as a weakness he could use. Chu Ching Lee suggested a deal. She explained that the association had detected the energy from his breakthrough and that she had to file a report. She suggested sending a report that was a mix of truth and lies to protect his identity while keeping her bosses happy. After a moment of thought, Fongis agreed to her plan. Su Genjing tried to call out to Fongis as he agreed to her plan, but in the blink of an eye, he was gone. She ran down the mountain slope after him, but it was no use. Tired and annoyed, she walked alone on a forest path, muttering in frustration about how many times she had failed to catch him, and how he was now trying to avoid her. She sighed, complaining about the tiring work of erasing the powerful energy signs he left behind after every incident. Her thoughts were cut short by a voice in her earpiece, telling her to stop worrying about the hard-to-find pioneer and remember the mission she was on. The voice seriously told her that the strange creatures had appeared again. Chu Ching Lee froze, her eyes wide with shock as she asked if they were really back. A scary memory flooded her mind, showing her surrounded by a crowd of terrifying wolf-like creatures with bloody mouths and glowing red eyes. She thought to herself that she would never forget those strange bloody beasts. The story explained what they were: cold, evil, and bloodthirsty monsters born from the pollution zones made by the spiritual energy's return. They got power from these zones, turning into monsters that ate humans. Some could even hide as natural disasters, killing anyone as they split up lands and made new pollution zones. If they weren't stopped, their very destructive nature would let them keep eating the human world until nothing was left. A heavy storm suddenly hit the city. The night sky wasn't lit by streetlights, but by constant violent flashes of lightning. Rain poured down and red alerts lit up people's phones warning of the severe thunderstorm and telling everyone to stay inside. Another alert announced that the Yuhuang mountain area was closed because of flooding risks. From their windows, people commented they hadn't seen a storm this bad in years, with some joking that a powerful being might be facing a lightning trial nearby. Hidden in a rainy alley, Fongis watched the storm grimly, his red eye glowing. He could feel the huge amount of lightning energy in the air, recognizing its wild power. He knew this was no ordinary storm, but another anomaly with its power focused on a single point. His eyes scanned past the city buildings and locked onto a distant mountain peak that was being hit by lightning again and again. He had found the center of the storm. Without hesitating, Fong raced into the downpour, leaping across rooftops as he sped toward the mountain. When Fongis reached the base of Yuhuang Mountain, his system immediately confirmed a pollution zone was detected. He looked up at the peak, but instead of its usual beauty, he saw a grim scene with skeletal remains scattered among twisted trees. Another system notice added to the danger, stating the pollution level was unknown. Still, Fongis moved forward without hesitating, walking into the dark, stormy woods with a determined look. As he got closer to the center of the storm, he saw a massive bolt of blue lightning strike the mountain's summit, lighting up the whole area. He had found his target. Inside the Spiritual Practitioners Association's command center, officials held a tense meeting. A large screen showed a vortex of blue energy over a mountain peak. An official reported that the danger on Mount Yuhuang was rising quickly, so they had to close it off and call it a new contamination zone. The grim-faced association leader said the situation was so critical, he had to pull Chu Ching Lee from another important mission. He asked her to report on what was happening. Chu Ching Lee told the officials that it was currently impossible to climb the mountain as the unstable thunder energy was about to explode. Because of this, the area was officially classified as an A-level contamination zone. She continued with more worrying news. Based on how fast the energy was growing, the mountain would soon be an S-level threat, which would start their highest emergency plan. But she pointed out a major problem. Based on their data, no explorer they had could safely get near the area, admitting that not even she could handle it. A wave of shock went through the room as calculations showed the mission would mean certain death even for highly advanced explorers. Facing this impossible situation, a man in a security uniform ordered the foot of Mount Yuhuang to be completely sealed off with patrols sent out 24/7 to stop anyone from trying to climb it. The association leader firmly agreed. He declared they had to stop the threat by sealing the mountain and that no one could go near it until the energy concentration dropped. While the association thought Mount Yuhuang was too dangerous, Fongis was already deep inside the zone. Huge bolts of blue lightning crashed down around him. As the storm raged, Fongis stood firm, protected by a golden aura from his breathing technique. He knew, however, that just surviving the storm wasn't enough. To get the purest thunder energy, he had to climb to the center of the storm at the mountain's peak. His decision was fueled by dark memories of the past. He knew that the creatures they faced now were just the beginning, and even more terrifying monsters would appear in the future. He realized that his current fire-based powers were not enough for the challenges to come. He had to become stronger himself, not just rely on his weapon. Surrounded by the lightning, Fongis saw a rare and perfect opportunity to use the thunder energy to strengthen his own body. Fongis knew if he didn't take this chance to get stronger, he would face certain death from the disasters to come. His eyes glowing gold, he drew his flaming sword and, with a defiant roar, plunged it directly into a massive bolt of blue lightning. The wild energy surged through him, causing terrible pain, but his face remained determined. His body shook violently as the electricity coursed through him. He realized this thunder power was like a divine punishment, actively fighting against him. The storm was furious that he had entered its territory and seemed to demand that he give up. Staring at the chaotic sky, he wondered how he could possibly make such a raw force obey him. Then he had an idea. He calmed himself and remembered his system's rule. To get a power, he had to touch the energy source. A golden aura exploded from him as he unleashed his golden sun breathing technique, determined to fight through the storm. With a loud roar, Fongis pushed forward using his flaming sword to cut a path through the storm of blue lightning. The clash of his golden energy against the raw storm created a huge chaotic explosion. Blood trickled from his mouth from the strain, but his eyes burned with determination. He knew this was a desperate gamble where he had to push himself to his limit, facing death in order to live. Finally, after a hard struggle, he reached the peak. He plunged his sword into the ground, cracking the rock as he arrived at the center of the storm. Here, the power was even more terrifying, a violent flood of thunder energy that made it hard to even breathe. He felt the storm's full attention on him and realized it no longer just wanted to push him away. It wanted to kill him. As if to prove it, the storm gathered its full power and shot a single massive beam of white-hot lightning directly at him, an attack meant to completely destroy him. As Fongis faced the storm's final attack, his system activated, detecting a powerful thunder attribute and starting to process it. Far below in the city, people watched from a tall building amazed. One man taking a photo had never seen lightning so big. Another wondered if a god was going through a trial, even thinking he saw a person in the sky. At the mountain's peak, the fight ended in a brilliant explosion. Fongis had won. A system message confirmed it, announcing he had obtained refined divine thunder power and could now summon heavenly lightning to make his body godlike. He was rewarded with 5 writing points. Fongis now floated in the air surrounded by blue lightning and his golden aura. He understood his new power. The thunder attribute was a top-tier force for both attack and defense. Unlike his sun power, which was mostly for defense, the thunder could refine his body and turn it into intense energy. He decided that the thunder was now his spear and his shield. He also realized the power wasn't just about destruction. It was also about purification and rebirth. He could feel the energy strengthening his bones and muscles without any pain. The system then offered him an upgrade to punish evil, which would grant him double critical damage, asking if he wanted to use writing points to get it. Landing softly, Fongis thought about what to do next. His first thought was to put this new thunder power into his tang sword. He considered it carefully. While it would make the blade stronger, he worried it might mess with the purity of the sun attribute already in it. He also knew that putting too many different powers into one item could damage or even destroy it. Suddenly, he had a brilliant idea. Looking at his hand, he decided to do something different. He would implant the thunder attribute directly into his right hand. The system immediately responded, asking if he wanted to put the thunder attribute into the chosen item. A confident smirk appeared on his face as he gave the command. Instantly, all the wild blue lightning in the air rushed into his right hand as he claimed the storm's power for himself. The next day, on the storm-damaged peak of Mount Yuhuang, the immediate danger was gone. Below a cliff, Chu Ching Lee and an army officer named Major Han Li stood over numerous figures in body bags. Chu Ching Lee reported that the contamination zone's energy had strangely dropped from its most dangerous level to a mild level in just 3 hours, though some electricity was still in the air. Major Han Li listened and immediately figured out what had happened. Someone had been there. It was a seeker, a person who actively looks for these dangerous events. Chu Ching Lee was shocked, wondering if another seeker was involved and if they could have survived. She knelt and looked for clues, couldn't sense anything, guessing that the heavy rain had washed away any evidence. She concluded that the seeker must have left the mountain safely around 8 p.m. the night before. Major Han Li agreed with her timeline. The strange event began around 6 p.m., and the army sealed the mountain at 7 p.m. So the seeker must have climbed the mountain before it was closed. He noted that their instruments predicted the danger would reach grade S, but after 8 p.m., the energy suddenly dropped. Standing where the lightning had been strongest, the major added his own theory. He believed the seeker not only survived the lightning, but probably had a thunder-related power, turning the disaster into a great opportunity. He concluded this person was the direct cause of the sudden change. The major then shared his biggest worry. People like this were the most dangerous because they didn't know whose side they were on. Chu Ching Lee agreed, adding that if such a powerful person was a threat, the disaster they could cause would be huge. They had to be found quickly. Miles away, sitting on his couch and unaware of the military operation now focused on him, Fongis let out a sudden loud sneeze. Back on the mountain, Major Han Li made his decision. He gave a firm order to his troops. Find this person immediately at any cost. As his command was given, he assigned the mysterious target his temporary code name, the Tyrant. The investigation on Yuhuang Mountain started right away. The army hoped the Spiritual Practitioners Association could recruit the mysterious person code named Tyrant soon. In the meantime, they would keep all information about the event secret and start their own investigation. On the rainy peak, the association leader told Major Han Li that they already had a high-level pioneer trying to make contact. He then turned to Chu Ching Lee and ordered her to give her report to the major. Chu Ching Lee was caught off guard by the order and gasped in panic. Forced to think fast, she began her half-true report. She connected the current incident to the pioneer who had recently cleared the pollution zone at a local university. Inside, she was panicking, terrified she would say something wrong and reveal her deal with Fong Yi. She explained that she had been trying to contact him, but he was hard to find. She mentioned finding the body of a mutated rabbit he had killed and correctly identified his yang flame attribute from the evidence. She finished by promising to do her best to get close to him and find out how he had cleared the university's gate. She silently prayed for help, knowing that mixing truth with lies was her only way to make her story sound real. Major Han Li listened closely, thinking about what a pioneer with a yang flame attribute meant. He seemed happy with her report and thanked her for her hard work, calling her a talented young pioneer. Chu Ching Lee gave a sharp salute and replied that it was her duty. With the meeting over, Major Han Li mentioned they would release fake news about natural disasters to hide the event from the public. He also said he disagreed with posting spiritual energy information online where bad people could use it. As the officials talked, Chu Ching Lee quietly sighed, relieved that the tough questioning was finally over. Back at his home, Fong Yi used his golden sun breathing technique to easily dry his white hoodie, making it glow with a warm light before holding it up perfectly clean and dry. After putting it on, he checked the changes in his body. Even after adding the powerful thunder attribute, he could still feel a clear difference. He looked down at his right hand, which now sparked with blue lightning. It had completely changed, becoming the strongest part of his body and getting a huge boost. As he flexed his fingers, making small balls of lightning appear, he could feel that he was close to another upgrade. What surprised him most was how the once wild thunder attribute had become as calm as a kitten after being added to his body, letting him control it freely. He compared this to the terrible pain he felt when he first unlocked the yang attribute and wondered if the energies got weaker during the process. Remembering the system told him this new power dealt double damage to strange and evil creatures, he was eager to test it. His thoughts were broken by a sudden alert from his phone on a nearby table. He picked it up, wondering what was happening now. He had set up special news alerts after the last incident, knowing that in these crazy times, the government would issue warnings to protect people. For a pioneer like him, however, these warnings were more than just notices of danger. In every crisis, there was a chance to grow stronger even if it meant risking his life. As Fong Yi thought about what to do next, he looked at the major news alert on his phone. The report said a huge explosion had just happened inside a chemical plant causing a lot of pollution in the city. The official story said no one was hurt and told people to stay calm, but Fong Yi was suspicious of an event this big. He checked online forums where people who saw it happen gave a much scarier story. People who live nearby described a super creepy feeling they couldn't explain. One person asked if it was a cold evil aura and another quickly agreed. While many were doubtful, the overall feeling was one of dread and fear. The words cold and evil aura felt familiar to Fong Yi. Suddenly, a terrifying memory from his past life came back, a bloody hand and a horrible monster. He remembered hiding in fear from a giant, red, demonic beast as it destroyed everything around it. The creature, a gross, multi-eyed, rat-like monster, was a threat he knew too well. Back in the present, he looked serious. He remembered the nature of these creatures. They were plants or animals that changed in a strange way after becoming self-aware, their power going wild and giving them terrifying hunting and killing abilities. They loved to appear in the dark of night. Realizing this new threat was 100 times more dangerous than the mutated rabbit he had fought before, Fong Yi knew he had to do something. Clenching his fist, which sparked with his new blue lightning, he decided he would go out that night to stop these creatures from surviving and getting stronger. Standing up, he was surrounded by blue electrical energy. It was time, he decided, to test his new 200% critical hit ability in a real fight. On a dark and stormy night, rain fell on the empty city streets. As a traffic light changed, a blur of motion sped across the wet road, a squad of cloaked figures moving with amazing speed. These were the members of the Destroyer Squad, and they were hunting. One member reported to their headquarters that they were tracking Anomaly File Number 7, code-named Candle Night, but had lost the target. The creature's known ability was to blend into the darkness, making it very hard to follow. The squad member added new scary details to the file. The anomaly made a faint sizzling sound when it was close and liked to eat humans. As lightning lit up the sky, the squad landed on a rooftop to look over the city. Their leader, a determined man with light hair and a scar on his face, knew the stormy weather was perfect for the creature's hunt. He said with grim certainty that they could not let that happen. Miles away, in a busy command center, an operator got the updated information. He confirmed the new data for File 7. Candle Night had been submitted. The situation was serious. An extermination request was filed as a high priority with a goal to solve it in 12 hours. The order came back from headquarters. The destroyer squad was to keep chasing the target, but their own safety was most important. The team immediately started the chase again, leaping from building to building through the rainy city. The squad leader paused, looking at a glowing holographic map of the city full of red markers showing active anomalies. He knew that a 12-hour response time wasn't fast, but it was the best headquarters could do. The country was large, and with anomalies appearing everywhere, even their advanced resources were stretched thin. Just as the destroyer squad got close to their target's last known location, a warning came from their headquarters. The operator told them that the area they were entering was currently occupied by Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association agents. A photo of Chu Ching Lee appeared on the screen as the operator explained that her team was watching pioneers there and could be asked to help. The destroyer squad's leader acknowledged the message and asked headquarters to have her come help, saying he had heard of her good work. Elsewhere, Chu Ching Lee was surprised to learn she had become so famous. The destroyer squad waited grimly in the rain. Soon, Chu Ching Lee and her own cloak team arrived, taking a spot on a higher rooftop. With a hand on her hip, she looked down at the squad below and casually asked if they were the ones calling her for overtime. The destroyer squad's leader was not happy with her casual tone. He sternly told her that the Candle Night anomaly eats people, and that this was much more serious than a simple overtime request. One of Chu Ching Lee's team members shot back, asking if that was the right way to ask for help. Chu Ching Lee then turned to leave, saying that the destroyer squad seemed so good. They probably didn't need help after all. She announced that her team, the Ing squad, would be leaving. As they started to go, her team members muttered among themselves, one worrying about their boss's savage attitude and another defending her, saying their own missions were just as dangerous. The leader of the destroyer squad immediately panicked and called for her to wait. He apologized for his harsh tone and begged for her help. He explained just how dangerous Candle Night was and that, without her famous tracking skills, they would be at a great disadvantage. He stressed that if his team failed, the people of the city would be the ones to suffer as the monster would kill them all. After agreeing to work together, the two teams stood on a rainy rooftop ready to hunt. Chu Ching Lee concentrated, and a glowing blue ball of energy appeared in her hand. She announced she had found the creature. The orb's energy expanded, showing the monster's location. Hidden in the dark, wet ruins of a chemical plant, the monstrous, multi-eyed rat-like creature called Candle Night was eating something. Its file noted that it liked darkness, dampness, and eating people. With the target found, Chu Ching Lee gave the command for the joint operation to start. The creature's senses were sharp, and it instantly looked up, aware of their presence. It jumped away just as an attack hit the ground where it had been. A member of the destroyer squad said the target had spotted them and ordered the team to form up. The squad members moved with incredible speed, their cloaks blurring as they chased it. They surrounded the creature from all sides, and with their prey trapped, they shouted together, ready to attack. One of the destroyer squad members lunged forward, shouting the order to attack. He hit the creature hard, sending it crashing into a pile of rubble. But instead of being weaker, the monster's body began to change, its back erupting with red sores and black spikes. With a furious shriek, the enraged Candle Night fought back, creating a vortex of dark energy. Chu Ching Lee desperately shouted for the teams to watch out for the sound wave and dodge. Her warning was a moment too late. A powerful sonic blast erupted from the creature, sending the squad members flying back. The destroyer squad's leader was thrown from the rooftop, crashing onto the street below. One of his team members rushed to his side. The leader pushed himself up, bruised but alive. He admitted that if he hadn't moved back at the last second, his bones would have been broken. He knew they were in grave danger. If the creature stayed in the city any longer, it would cause a huge disaster. The battle took another turn as Candle Night continued to change. It grew large, bat-like wings and let out a roar, its throat glowing with green energy. It then spewed a corrosive dark substance that filled the air with toxic green smoke. The creature aimed this blast at the ground, trying to melt the street to burrow underground and escape. One of Chu Ching Lee's team members warned her that the monster had a corrosive dark power and that anything it touched would be destroyed. She explained that their team didn't have a power strong enough to fight it. Chu Ching Lee, however, stayed calm. She ordered her team to stay alert and not to mess up the Destroyer Squad's formation, reminding them their main job was to gather information and help with strategy. Meanwhile, a Destroyer Squad member with a dagger prepared to strike the escaping creature. Suddenly, a pair of menacing red eyes glowed from the darkness. The winged Candle Knight lunged forward, narrowly dodging an attack from a leaping squad member. Enraged, the Destroyer Squad leader yelled at his team not to let the monster escape. The winged creature flew through the city streets, chased by the cloaked members of the Ing squad. From a high rooftop, Chu Ching Lee and two of her team members watched. Suddenly, she sensed a sharp increase in spiritual energy from the creature's direction. Realizing something important was about to happen, she ordered her team to stay outside while she followed it in by herself. The chase led them to a large, dark, abandoned factory. Inside, Chu Ching Lee said she would scan the area's spiritual energy. The Destroyer Squad's leader noticed the advanced watch on her wrist. She confirmed it was a new device from the association, explaining that the watch showed the energy level a squad could safely handle was 50. Candle Knight's reading had been just 48. Suddenly, the device on her wrist began to flash wildly, the reading shooting past 80. Chu Ching Lee shouted that the energy levels were going crazy. At that moment, a massive shadowy form with glowing green eyes appeared in the rafters above. They had been led into a trap. Chu Ching Lee realized with horror that there was more than one creature in the factory. The shadowy, monstrous face of a new creature loomed behind them. The Destroyer Squad's leader panicked, yelling that they needed to retreat immediately. Taking charge, Chu Ching Lee suggested a tactical retreat toward the main door to force the hidden enemy to show itself. She fired a blast of energy to clear a path, shouting for her team to follow. But before they could escape, she cried out in pain and collapsed, her senses overwhelmed by an invisible poison gas. Chu Ching Lee suddenly found herself alone in the vast green darkness of the factory. She called out to her team, but no one answered. She knew they were nearby, but the poison had made them unable to sense her. Putting the pieces together, she realized the full trap. Candle Knight had led them to this factory, which was the territory of a much more powerful creature, a giant serpent she had only faintly sensed earlier. As if summoned by her thoughts, the huge armored head of a shadowy serpent with glowing green eyes loomed over her. She now understood that unlike Candle Knight's simple dark power, this creature's black mist was a strong poison, and they had been breathing it in since they arrived. The gas worked silently, paralyzing its victims while draining their spiritual energy. Fighting back would only use up their power faster, leading to certain death. She could feel her own spiritual energy was almost gone, and without it, she knew she would soon be another victim. As she collapsed to the floor, her strength gone, she despaired at the terrifying intelligence of a creature that was just playing with them. She closed her eyes, wondering if this was the end. Lying defeated on the factory floor, Chu Ching Lee saw a single ray of light cut through the green darkness above. A flicker of hope appeared in her eyes. Suddenly, the factory ceiling exploded inward, and a blinding light filled the room. Her eyes widened as a figure came down from the blast. It was Fong Yi. He landed gracefully in the rubble, his hooded figure standing out against the glowing hole in the ceiling. He stood before the giant serpent, immediately identifying it as a dark attribute creature. Without warning, the serpent lunged, its massive fangs aimed at him. At the same time, the Candle Knight monster burst from the shadows, attacking from behind. Fong Yi dodged the serpent's attack and came face to face with the growling rat-like beast. As the two creatures closed in, he finally understood the full trap he had walked into. In a shocking move, Fong Yi let the Candle Knight monster bite his shoulder. As blood splattered, he noted their surprisingly smart tactics. One creature for luring prey, the other for killing them. He taunted the beast latched onto him, asking if it enjoyed biting people so much. In response, he unleashed his new power. Bright blue lightning erupted from his body as he challenged the monster to taste his thunder property. At the same time, he fired a massive beam of golden solar energy from his free hand, which hit the lunging serpent head-on. Now covered in crackling electricity and free from the stunned rat creature, Fong Yi turned his full attention to the serpent, unleashing a flood of golden flames as he challenged it to see how well it could handle fire. The giant serpent lunged with a furious roar, its huge mouth open to eat its prey. With amazing agility, Fong Yi dodged the attack, flipping through the air while swinging his glowing golden sword. As he landed, he coolly told the monster to look at his blade, a clear challenge to the giant beast. The serpent seemed to pull back, cautious of the glowing weapon. Seeing his chance, Fong Yi counterattacked. Leaping through the air, he delivered a powerful slash to the serpent's face, his sword covered in the crackling blue energy of his thunder power. The force of the blow was huge, but the result wasn't what he expected. Instead of crushing its skull, the creature's head split down the middle, revealing a second identical head underneath, as if it were shedding its skin. Fong Yi landed on his feet, his eyes wide with surprise at this strange development. The creature's split head then pulled apart completely, shedding its outer layer to reveal its true healed form. As green energy pulsed in its neck, Fong Yi knew the fight was far from over. The serpent reacted with shock and pain as the leftover thunder energy from Fong Yi's sword ran through its body. It roared in fury as the electrical energy grew stronger, overwhelming its dark power. Watching the creature twist in pain, Fong Yi gave a small confident smirk. He knew he had the advantage, as he had already sensed the serpent's dark aura was stronger than Candle Knight's. He then revealed his clever plan. When he attacked with his sword, he had held back the full force of his fire. Instead, he had used the blade to carry and channel the thunder power from his hand directly into the snake's body. He compared the two creatures, realizing the serpent was a far more dangerous and evolved monster than Candle Knight. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his shoulder where the rat creature had bitten him. He hissed, looking down to see strange purple snake scales growing from the wound. He understood immediately, just as he'd thought. This was a smart mutated species. Its poison, delivered by its partner's bite, had a paralyzing effect that let it kill silently. He could feel a sharp pain from the wound, but he also felt his golden sun breathing technique working to fight the venom. With a determined look, he knew he had the perfect counter. The yang flame power could dissolve the poison. The golden sun technique would protect and heal his body, and the thunder power would purify anything left. As the energy from his powers pulsed through him, Fong Yi recognized the benefit of his combined abilities. The mix of his yang flame and thunder powers now gave him a clear pain signal to any poison acting as an early warning system. He knew he was lucky. For others, the serpent's sneaky poison would have been impossible to cure. He guessed that for the serpent to have grown so large, it must have relied on surprise attacks. He thought of the monster's den filled with the skulls of its victims. With Candle Knight acting as the perfect bait, the two creatures had become a deadly trap even for top pioneers, which explained why so many had disappeared. But in the end, it didn't matter. As he watched the creature's huge skeleton burn to ash in his holy fire, he knew its reign of terror was over. Standing before the fire, Fong Yi felt satisfied. His inner flame was powerful, but the triple critical hit from his new thunder power had sealed his victory. He felt confident that his fighting skills were now pretty good even compared to other high-level pioneers. He stood silently for a moment watching the flames burn the last of the monster. Just as he was about to leave, he paused, reaching out his hand as if he sensed something. His eyes narrowed. He wasn't alone. Someone was still there. He turned just in time to see a figure stumbling out from the smoke, coughing from the ash. It was Chu Ching Lee. She stood silently, covered in soot and clearly tired, but she was alive. As the smoke cleared, Fong Yi found himself looking at the unconscious members of the other squad, with Chu Ching Lee sitting among them. He recognized her as the agent from the association and coolly told her that there was no need to pretend. He added that her playing dead act needed work, which surprised her. Embarrassed, Chu Ching Lee covered her face. Realizing this was the same powerful pioneer she had been tracking, she tried to make an excuse, claiming she woke up from the smell. Fong Yi, however, wasn't fooled. He complimented her, pointing out that while her teammates were out of energy, she was strong enough to keep a small reserve to protect herself. If she had really been unconscious, he explained, she wouldn't have been able to smell anything. Flustered, Chu Ching Lee could only offer an awkward thank you. In her mind, she was amazed. He had seen right through her. She had indeed kept a bit of spiritual energy for protection. She had no idea how he had beaten both Candle Knight and the giant serpent all by himself. Noticing her embarrassment, Fong Yi's tone softened. He told her she didn't need to cover her eyes, and that he only asked her to be honest with him and keep his identity secret. Seeing she and her team were safe, he said it was getting late and he would be leaving. Chu Ching Lee tried to call out to him, but it was too late. Saying that explaining things would spoil the surprise, he jumped effortlessly through the hole he had made in the factory ceiling and disappeared into the night. As he traveled across the rooftops, Fong Yi thought about the battle. He was glad Chu Ching Lee hadn't tried to absorb the dark power from the monsters, remembering its disgusting coldness. He wondered why he couldn't absorb it himself. He guessed maybe the dark energy was already gone or his body had instinctively rejected it. He decided to think about it later at home. Left alone in the huge abandoned factory, Chu Ching Lee looked up at the moonlit hole in the ceiling where Fong Yi had disappeared. She sighed, disappointed that she hadn't gotten a good look at his face and realizing he still didn't trust her or the association. Her quiet moment was short. Acting like a squad leader again, she walked over to the unconscious captain of the destroyer squad and gave him a few slaps, telling him to wake up. The man groaned and slowly opened his eyes, bruised and confused. His first thought was panic, and he shot up, shouting that they had been ambushed. Chu Ching Lee just watched him with a calm look. The leader and his squad members then saw why she was so calm, the massive smoking skeleton of the giant serpent. They stared in total disbelief, confused by the scene. The leader demanded to know what happened and where the powerful yang energy came from. Chu Ching Lee calmly explained that a powerful pioneer had rescued them. She continued her carefully planned report explaining that the pioneer was likely the person from her original mission, a very high-level individual with a yang attribute. She let her voice trail off, suggesting his appearance was a lucky coincidence. The other squad members were in complete awe, with one saying it was unbelievable that one person could defeat both monsters. Chu Ching Lee added that she hadn't managed to recruit him yet and that he had even managed to track her back, which only made him more mysterious. Getting back to their grim job, the destroyer squad leader asked where Candle Knight's body was. As he began using a green energy technique to clean the scene, he said they needed to collect the remains for the association. As the squads began the cleanup, the destroyer squad's leader used a green orb of energy to gather the strange dark remains left from the battle. As he stepped forward, he accidentally crushed a piece of debris on the floor, which suddenly exploded in a blast of bright blue electrical energy. He jumped back in pain, yelling at the force of the shock as Chu Ching Lee looked on in surprise. This new discovery only made things more mysterious. The remains, which they now realized belonged to Candle Knight, were crackling with leftover electricity. The squad leader turned to Chu Ching Lee, questioning her report. He reminded her she had said the pioneer had a yang attribute, yet this incredibly strong electrical power told a different story. The two leaders knelt to look at the electrically charged body. Chu Ching Lee was stunned by the pure strength of the thunder power left behind, confirming it was a high-tier power. This led the destroyer squad's leader to a new idea. Maybe two high-level pioneers had appeared, one to kill the serpent and another to kill Candle Knight before leaving together. Chu Ching knew that wasn't right. She struggled with how to explain the unbelievable truth, remembering the image of the lone pioneer holding both crackling blue lightning and roaring golden fire. She knew no one would believe that a single person could have two different top-level powers. Having just one made you a genius. Having two was almost unheard of. The impossible proof was right in front of them. The burning skeleton of the giant serpent was the work of a yang flame walker, while the electrified body of Candle Knight was the clear mark of a thunder tyrant. The combined squads could only look on in complete disbelief, wondering what kind of monster this mysterious pioneer really was. As reinforcements from the association arrived, Chu Ching Lee was glad she had left team members outside. If she had been inside too long without checking in, they would have reported her missing. She grimly realized the rescue team now at the scene had originally been sent to collect their bodies. Her two subordinates were knocked out by the serpent's poison, finally woke up. They scrambled to her side, crying with relief that their captain was still alive. With the threat gone, the association's team began their work. Their job had changed from a rescue to a forensic investigation. Using advanced scanning tech, they carefully analyzed the leftover spiritual energy and the battle signs, trying to piece together what happened for their report back to headquarters. Soon, one of the specialists approached Chu Ching Lee and the destroyer squad's leader with his findings. He reported that after comparing all the data, from fighting habits to the way both monsters were killed, there was a 99% probability that one person was responsible for killing both of them. The two squad leaders stared at each other, their faces showing both shock and serious concern. The other squad members murmured to each other in disbelief. They were processing the fact that they had been saved by a pioneer with two different high-tier powers, something they never thought was possible. They knew either monster could have easily killed them all, yet this powerhouse had finished them both off, seeming to use single strikes. The power difference between them and this mysterious person was just ridiculous. Understanding the huge importance of this discovery, Chu Ching Lee contacted her superior. She reported that the information on her target had been significantly updated. Looking up at the hole in the ceiling, she confirmed that the mysterious pioneer from the university and the powerful individual code-named Tyrant were in fact the same person. Back in his office, the association superior listened calmly to her report. After thinking about the information, he gave a new command, telling Xiao Tzu to pause her mission for now. He explained that the pioneer had saved her team, killed the monsters, and secured the area. These were not the actions of an enemy. He added that he and Old Han, Major Han Lee, didn't agree on the matter. And for her own safety and to avoid leaving a bad impression on their powerful potential ally, she was to stop all contact with the tyrant for the time being. While on the phone with her boss, Chu Ching Lee, though she had agreed to pause her mission, couldn't help but add one more piece of information. She told him she had one more theory based on what happened when she had tracked Tyrant to the back mountain where he was advancing his power. Her boss, interested, asked her to explain. She explained that during that encounter, she had sensed an incredibly strong aura where he was active. At the time, she suspected he might have a spiritual weapon but thought it was unlikely. However, now that it was confirmed he had 2 high-tier powers, the possibility seemed much more real. The association superior was surprised by this new information, questioning if the pioneer really had a spiritual weapon. He quickly became skeptical, leaning back and saying it was highly unlikely. He argued that no matter how talented, a solo pioneer couldn't possibly have such a rare item without outside help. Furthermore, he added, the team had found no traces of a third spiritual energy, which would usually come from a separately made spiritual weapon. Chu Ching Lee quickly corrected him, clarifying an important detail. The spiritual weapon aura she had sensed during her first encounter with him was clearly a yang attribute. This new information completely changed things. The superior's eyes widened as he understood what this meant. If the weapon's attribute came directly from the user's own yang energy, it meant he wasn't just using a weapon, he was creating it. This led to an amazing conclusion. If he could create his own spiritual weapons, then he had to be a spirit creation realm cultivator. Such a being could theoretically do this alone, but that level of power was almost mythical. Chu Ching Lee was floored by this idea, knowing that cultivators at that level were extremely rare with barely more than 2 in the entire world. The superior then thought of an even more terrifying possibility. If this person did have a third separate attribute, it would shift the balance of power and shake the entire pioneer community. He explained that according to all known research, different attributes clash inside the human body, making it nearly impossible for them to exist together. So far, no pioneer had ever been confirmed to have 3 different spiritual attributes. Therefore, if the pioneer truly had a spiritual weapon, the fact that they didn't detect a third energy signature from it might actually be a good thing. As the call ended, the superior was left with a single worrying thought. He could only hope that such a powerful pioneer would never become an enemy of humanity. Back at his apartment, Fongis stood thoughtfully under a hot shower, washing away the dirt and tiredness from his recent battle. As he dried off, he thought about the current state of the world. He knew there was less than a year until the official spiritual energy revival, but dangerous monsters and strange events were already happening more and more often. He used his yang attribute to easily dry his clothes, his hand glowing with golden energy as he thought about how many pioneers, like himself, had already started cultivating on their own. He thought back to the aggressive men he had met at the lava river, realizing that once the connection between the body and the spiritual world was opened, people naturally became more sensitive to the world's changes. He recognized that even without the country's official approval, many self-trained pioneers had already reached the 1-star Ghost Axe realm. The fact that the government, through agents like Chu Ching Lee, was now reaching out to wild pioneers like him, showed that both sides were in a relatively peaceful phase of mutual exploration. Standing in his room, thinking about Major Han Lee and Chu Ching Lee, he concluded that for now, the monsters were still under control, and there was no serious conflict yet among the different pioneer groups. However, as he finished getting dressed, he knew this peace was fragile. The government had already created the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association, but it still hadn't told the public about it. He understood their strategy perfectly. While people were talking more about local problems and strange events, the government was walking a fine line, trying to both protect humanity and give subtle early warnings without causing mass panic. Despite his recent victories, Fongis' analysis of the world situation was still grim. He knew the problem was the government's lack of confidence to officially start a full-scale cultivation era with such a huge population. He understood that once the full truth was revealed, society would likely collapse into chaos and death. In the current state, even official pioneers couldn't stop the inevitable chaos, and the mix of internal problems and external threats from monsters would only make things worse. He admitted that the government's gentle, careful approach wasn't wrong, knowing that human fear and panic could be more destructive than any monster. However, what truly worried him was how fast the monsters were developing, which was far exceeding his expectations. He reviewed the information on the creatures he had just fought. They were a typical product of dark attribute contamination, specifically the shadow attribute, a sub-branch of dark energy that his system identified as a natural enemy to pioneers and currently something he couldn't absorb. He realized these monsters were far smarter than typical beasts, working together to trap and kill pioneers, whom they saw as a good food source. He knew, however, that these creatures were still much weaker than the true dark-type monsters he remembered from his previous life, monsters that could destroy entire countries on their own. Still, the close call was a serious reminder of the growing danger. He was certain that, if he hadn't been there, Chu Ching Lee and her entire squad would have been wiped out. A bit of hope sparked inside him as he thought about the system's wording. The fact that the dark attribute was only temporarily unabsorbable suggested that once certain conditions were met, he might be able to use its power himself, a possibility that could be key to winning in the future. He reviewed his current abilities. He now possessed the golden sun-breathing technique of the yang attribute, the divine thunder tempering of the thunder attribute, and the crimson flame blade technique. With these perfectly suited high-tier techniques and his current strength as a 3-star Ghost Axe Realm pioneer, he knew very few could match him. Yet, as he stood surrounded by his own great power, he knew with absolute certainty that it was still not enough. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted by his phone ringing. He picked it up, surprised to see a call from his auntie. On the other end of the line, his aunt asked about his health before explaining the real reason for her call. She told him that his cousin was coming to study in the city and worried for her safety, asked if she could stay at his place for a few days instead of a hotel. Fong Yi was taken aback, his memory of his cousin extremely fuzzy. All he could recall was a quiet, straight-A student who was obsessed with her studies. He couldn't even remember what she looked like. Despite this, he agreed, telling his aunt that there was a spare room. When he asked when she would be arriving, his aunt simply replied that she would give the cousin his address and let her come over by herself. Elsewhere, in a dark room lit only by a computer monitor, a person with long, almost claw-like fingers typed quickly on a keyboard. The person, wearing a big hoodie with bare ears, was finishing a phone call with her mother. Her mother, who was Fong Yi's aunt, told her that she should arrive at her cousin's place by tomorrow afternoon and that she would bring some specialty snacks. The person politely ended the call, saying it was no trouble and that she had something else to do. On her screen was a chat window for a group called Spiritual Energy Revival, Martial Arts Vanguard Team. The user, Fong Haiju, had just announced her arrival in the city and her plans to stay at her cousin's place. After ending the call, she clicked her mouse, pulling up a new window. It was a rumor alert about an internet-famous town, now nicknamed Death Town, where 3 more people had vanished in relation to a pork beast challenge. A gruesome blood-splattered image of the town was with the article. With glowing glasses reflecting the screen, Fong Haiju identified the location as Manhwa Town. Her interest clearly sparked. Her browsing was interrupted when her mother entered the room, asking if she had finished packing. Fong Haiju told her mother that she was packed, but that she'd rather stay in a hotel than bother her cousin. Her mother insisted, saying it was much safer than staying alone, and that she trusted the cousin completely. Gently pushing her daughter out the door, her mother gave her some final advice. Be sure not to cause trouble and help out around the house when she could. Fong Haiju reassured her mother that she understood. Once the door was closed, Fong Haiju let out a small sigh, preparing herself for the visit. She thought of it as just one more hurdle to overcome. Adjusting her glasses with a flash of determination, she resolved that no matter what her cousin was like, he couldn't possibly be more difficult to handle than a monster. The next day, under a bright blue sky, a young woman with long dark hair and glasses pulled a suitcase toward an apartment building. She checked her phone, confirming that the map had led her to the correct destination. Looking up at the building, she murmured to herself that this must be the place, ready to finally meet the cousin she barely remembered. As Lin Yi stood outside the apartment building, Fong Yi came out carrying a bag. She called out asking if he was her cousin. He stopped, surprised, and asked if she was Lin Yi to confirm. Though he admitted to himself that he didn't recognize her at all, an awkward silence hung between them for a moment. Later, inside the apartment, they sat on the couch making polite conversation. Fong Yi asked if she was in the city for a summer camp, which she confirmed. He told her to let him know if she needed anything, and she thanked him. After their brief chat, he gave her the key to her room, which was across from his, before going to his own room. As she watched him leave, she felt relieved, thinking her cousin seemed easy to get along with and wouldn't get in her business. However, Fong Yi was not clueless. From the moment she sat down, he had sensed a faint but strange spiritual aura from her. He wondered if his senses were off or if she just wasn't good enough to hide her power. He immediately suspected that she was also a pioneer. The aura he felt was faint but clear, and he realized her story about a summer camp was probably a cover for her real reason for being in the city. Meanwhile, in her room, Lin Yi was on her phone confirming Fong Yi's suspicions. She messaged her pioneer group, the martial arts vanguard team, saying her cousin seemed nice and wouldn't interfere. The chat turned to recent events with members talking about the powerful pioneer at the lava river. Lin Yi warned her team to be careful as many powerful people were still hiding. After agreeing to wait for her signal, she logged off. She decided it was best not to do any cultivation for now, worried her cousin might discover her secret. 3 days passed. Fong Yi soon found that living with his cousin was making his cultivation difficult. His meditations could be interrupted at any time, like when she came out of the bathroom wrapped only in a towel. He also worried that the bright golden aura from his breathing technique was too obvious and would be impossible to hide, but the hardest part was her overwhelming kindness. One evening, she proudly gave him a delicious-looking dinner she had made. He tried to insist on doing the dishes, but she refused, saying it was the least she could do. He found her perfect politeness and extreme cleanliness almost strange. Despite the trouble, Fong Yi decided to go along with it. He thought that by letting her be overly helpful, he might get her to let her guard down. He knew this was the only way he could find out what she was really up to. Their quiet dinner was interrupted when her phone on the table began to vibrate. Both cousins glanced at the message, their expressions surprised for a moment. Fong Yi used the chance to excuse himself, saying he would go back to his room while she chatted. His cousin could only quietly reply as he left. Left alone, she stared thoughtfully after him for a moment before turning to her phone. Sitting on her bed, she took the call, her expression turning serious. She repeated the information she was getting, confirming that the great change of heaven and earth would happen again the next day at 3 in the afternoon, and she promised she would be there. Fong Yi easily overheard his cousin's phone conversation. She agreed to meet at the entrance of Yango Town. He recognized the name as an internet-famous town in the suburbs about an hour's drive away. With his suspicions confirmed, he watched her through the wall, his own spiritual energy flaring. He was now certain his cousin was also a pioneer. He was confident, however, that with her current strength, she wouldn't be able to sense him spying. He was impressed by her power. She was still just a middle school student, but she had already reached the 2-star Ghost Axe realm and was close to another breakthrough. He wondered if her high natural talent was the reason for her somewhat strange personality. He now understood her real purpose in the city. The summer camp was just an excuse. She had learned about the coming great change of heaven and earth and had come to be at the center of it. He knew that every one of these great changes was a chance to get a new technique to increase his own strength. He wondered what kind of power would appear this time. In the end, it didn't matter. With a determined look, he decided that whatever power appeared, he would take it for himself. In her room, his cousin suddenly paused, feeling a strange sensation. She looked around wondering if it was just her imagination or if someone had been watching her. Seeing nothing but the moonlit mountains outside, she dismissed the feeling and continued her preparations. The next day, the town of Yanghua was buzzing with activity with its mountains in the background. At the town's entrance, Lin Yi met a friend from her pioneer group. The friend playfully teased Yi about her cousin, asking if he was handsome. Yi replied that he was a good person but just an ordinary-looking guy. Her friend sighed in disappointment. Just then, another woman from their group arrived, a redhead in a purple dress. She reminded the first friend that Yi herself had always said she was just an ordinary person. With the rest of their team there, the redhead announced it was time to get to business. One of the male members asked if certain she was not coming. The redhead confirmed it would just be the 6 of them, adding that the missing member was always mysterious. Unknown to them, Fong Yi was watching from a nearby cafe balcony, his sword beside him. He noted that his cousin's little squad seemed to be pretty low-key. From where he was, he could sense their strength. The weakest was at the 2-star ghost axe level, and the man who had spoken was even a 3-star. He also overheard them say their team was usually stronger with one powerful member often absent. As he sat watching, his attention was drawn to the mountains overlooking the town. His eyes narrowed with anticipation, sensing this was where the real event was about to happen. High in the mountains, the great change of heaven and earth finally happened. A giant green vine came down from the clouds, looking like the beanstalk from the fairy tale. This strange event would appear randomly and wasn't destructive, but for pioneers, it was an important key to understanding the changes in their world. Deep in the misty mountains, Lin Yi and her squad finally saw the incredible sight. The red-haired leader looked up in awe, confirming this was what they were looking for. The group stood in disbelief before the massive pulsing vine. However, the awe quickly turned to fear. The group's adventurous friend suddenly grew pale and urged the others to stop, saying they shouldn't go any further. She was trembling with dread. She explained that seeing the vine in person gave her a terrible feeling. The leader then asked if they had seen the rumors on their internal pioneer forums. The friend's fear came from a dark story. She said she knew some of the pioneers from a team that had tried to touch the vine the last time it appeared. They were powerful, much stronger than she was, yet they all met a horrible end. She explained that after they came here, they were all buried, their skeletons now twisted within the roots of a dark version of the vine. Overcome with terror, she clutched her head in panic. She confessed she had a feeling they would all suffer the same fate. As she spoke, the reality around the group changed, and they were no longer on a mountain path. Instead, they were trapped inside a terrifying, pulsating, fleshy red cavern, the ground itself a gross mass of organic tendrils. The vision of their death was just a scary premonition. Back on the misty mountain path, the squad's adventurous friend, scammed in an online romance, was still shaken by the feeling of dread. She admitted that while she was originally ready to take the pioneer's risk to either come back rich or die, the moment she saw the vine, she felt an overwhelming fear. Her gut told her this was a new, unknown, and powerful high-level monster, a mutation she couldn't handle. Tears filled her eyes as she said she wasn't ready to die here and wanted to back out. The red-haired leader and Lin Yi looked at their upset teammate with understanding. They confirmed they had all felt the same heavy feeling from the vine. Lin Yi explained it further, describing it as a feeling of complete emptiness within the wood-type vine. It was a strange feeling, as if all life had been swallowed by time, leaving only an empty shell. This, she explained, was why they all felt so scared. The group came to a scary conclusion. The vine was trying to eat their life force. Just as the fearful friend was about to panic, Lin Yi grabbed her hand, her face showing fierce determination. She declared that this was the path of the martial pioneer, a path that required them to face such dangers directly. Unseen by the group, Fong Yi watched from a nearby cliff. He too could sense the heavy, suffocating death energy coming from the giant vine. He noted that out of all the world monsters he had faced besides the pure dark attribute, this vine gave him the worst feeling. He had to admit the small squad had serious guts to even think about cultivating in such a dangerous place. He analyzed the monster more closely. While it was clearly a plant, a symbol of life, it felt completely lifeless. It wasn't really alive, but a dead thing pretending to be living with no spiritual energy of its own. He could see it was stained with the blood and bodies of its past victims. Back with the squad, Lin Yi took charge. She stood on a cliff edge, speaking to her team with a new purpose. She told them they didn't have much time to waste. Knowing the danger, she suggested a new plan. They would carefully sense the energy around the area, checking out the monster without getting too close. Confident in her plan, Lin Yi believed that by sensing the monster's energy from a distance, her team would be safe enough. She found a spot high in a tree and began to meditate, surrounding herself in a protective bubble of blue spiritual energy. From a cliff top far away, Fong Yi watched them. He was impressed by their caution, noting they had chosen a distance that was both safe and good for cultivating. He gave credit to his top student cousin for correctly figuring out the best range, a position that was neither too reckless nor too timid. As Yi's cultivation grew stronger, the spiritual energy around her began to surge. Fong Yi watched in surprise, realizing she was about to have a breakthrough to the 3-star ghost axe realm. He was genuinely impressed. His cousin was truly talented. In a bright flash of blue light, she successfully broke through. Her teammates watched in awe, amazed that she had already reached such a high level of power. However, the huge energy disturbance from her breakthrough did not go unnoticed. Deep in the forest, the sleeping roots of the giant vine began to twist and glow with a scary green light. The pioneers felt the ground shake, and one of the men looked back in alarm. The whole group panicked as the monstrous vine began moving directly toward them, its tendrils bursting from the earth. The team's leader was shocked that the creature could have possibly sensed them from so far away. The vine's attack was fast and brutal. Vicious green tendrils shot up from the ground, trapping 2 of the male pioneers. The rest of the squad scattered in fear as their friends screamed for them to run, warning that if they didn't escape now, they would all die there. The team's leader quickly realized what caused the disaster. Yi's breakthrough had created too much of a disturbance, getting the monster's attention. As she shouted a warning, dark green tendrils began to wrap around Yi's protective bubble, which was still shielding her while she was weak after her breakthrough. The leader knew they couldn't get caught. Once the vine wrapped around them, its deathly aura would eat them instantly. Under the immense pressure, Yi's energy shield began to crack. Chaos broke out as the red-haired leader tried to pull her panicked friend to safety. The friends screamed that they couldn't leave Yi behind, but the leader replied desperately, asking what she was supposed to do. She furiously asked if she should use her own precious spiritual energy to protect Yi, basically dying so her teammate could level up. As chaos erupted around them, the red-haired leader tried to calm one of her male teammates who was arguing that they should leave Yi to save themselves. He coldly said that life and death were up to fate, and if they didn't leave right away, they would all die with her. He reminded her that they were all just people who had met by chance and that she was being too emotional. This cold, practical view, however, only made the leader angrier. She shoved him aside, shouting that she would not leave her teammate even if it meant going against the rest of them. From his cliff-top spot, Fong Yi watched the scene. He knew his cousin, still just a student, was probably unaware of how much danger she was in as she remained weak in her meditative state. The vine's power was overwhelming, and he wasn't sure if even he could save her with his current strength. But he knew he had to act fast as the tendrils were already starting to crush her protective barrier. He clenched his fist, a golden aura flaring around him. He had made a promise to his aunt to take care of her, and a promise made must be kept. The red-haired leader jumped into action, leaping through the grabbing vines to reach Yi. She landed a powerful kick against one of the tendrils, breaking it with the force of the hit, but her victory didn't last long. Dozens more vines shot out, wrapping around her and trapping her completely. Just as the vines were about to crush her, Yi's protective shield finally broke. But before the monstrous plant could grab its new victims, Fong Yi stepped in. Leaping through the air, he sent out 2 arcs of bright golden energy from his sword. The rest of Yi's squad could only watch in horror, screaming her name as they saw her shield break. A massive fiery phoenix-shaped blast of energy shot down from the sky, hitting the massive vines with explosive force. Fong landed gracefully in the now cleared area, a small pillar of golden flame rising from the ground where he stood, having saved both his cousin and her brave leader just in time. As Fong Yi floated in a bright aura of golden light, just his presence was enough to overwhelm the deathly vine. The surviving members of the pioneer squad watched in stunned silence as the monstrous plant, which had just been moments from killing them all, stopped its attack and began to pull back from the overwhelming yang energy. The tendrils pulled back from the intense light, hissing and dissolving as they retreated. As Fong Yi came down, surrounded in a radiant glow, the pioneers could only cover their eyes from the blinding light, barely able to understand what was happening. The practical male pioneer who had suggested leaving Yi was completely shocked, questioning if this newcomer was another pioneer. The red-haired leader, just as stunned, recognized the power for what it was, the purest form of the yang attribute. She knew that only a high-tier power of this level could possibly push back such a powerful life-draining monster. The male pioneer had a crisis of confidence. He had always thought of himself as extremely talented, having reached the 3-star Ghost Axe realm in a very short time, a feat few in the country could match. He knew that even the talented Lin Yi's skill barely matched his own, and yet this mysterious stranger was on a completely different level. He looked down at his own hands, then up at the glowing figure on the cliff top, feeling completely insignificant. If pioneers like that existed, he wondered, then what were they? The newcomer hadn't just beaten him. He had beaten all of them with his pure, overwhelming power. As Fong Yi stood bathed in the golden light of his power, his system activated. It had detected the extreme wood attribute from the deathly vine and had started the auto-writing process, quickly finishing a new technique. The system window then showed the details of his new ability, Endless Vitality, a technique that could instantly absorb all nearby life force to quickly heal injuries. As the power of the vine flowed into him, he was surrounded in a surge of green life-giving energy. He was amazed at the incredible wood attribute technique he had just gotten, realizing that as long as there was life nearby, he now had what was basically a non-stop energy-absorbing engine. As Fong Yi absorbed the last of the Anomalies' power, his system successfully extracted the vine's main attribute. A notification confirmed it. Extracted attribute, Desolation. The system described its scary power, the ability to instantly create a desolate aura that would destroy all surrounding life. Fong Yi stood calmly in the swirling green energy, fully taking in the new power. When he opened his eyes, they glowed with the same vibrant green as the desolate vine. He stood in the now lifeless clearing, a faint green aura around him. He now understood why the vine could only grow in such a dangerous remote place. If it grew anywhere else, it would drain every bit of life for miles around. He thought about the ruthless nature of the Desolation attribute, a powerful force that forcibly stole the life force of others. His thoughts were interrupted by a grateful voice. The red-haired leader of the pioneer group approached, her clothes torn and her body bruised, but she was alive. She thanked him greatly, saying that without him, they would all be dead. She then asked how they could possibly repay him for saving their lives. Fong Yi simply waved her off, coolly telling her there was no need and that they would meet again someday. He then turned and walked away. In his mind, however, he didn't feel like a hero. He knew that he had only found this opportunity because of their information. In his mind, he was the one who had benefited from the situation. As for the conflict he had seen among the pioneers, he wasn't concerned. With a final leap, he launched himself into the air, leaving the stunned squad behind. He knew that people's true characters are easily shown in a crisis, and a disorganized team like theirs would not be safe in the dangerous new era. Left in the empty clearing, the adventurous girl and the shaggy-haired man watched him go. The girl, still in shock, wondered aloud what they should do now. The man, however, answered her with a bitter blaming tone, asking if she now regretted her earlier hesitation to save their teammates. With the immediate threat gone and Lin Yi now at the third tier, the red-haired leader knew their best option was to stick together. Sometime later, Yi's eyes opened, glowing a brilliant blue as she came out of her meditation. Her teammates rushed to her side, relieved she was finally awake. The male pioneer who had suggested leaving her now said that their fate depended on their leader's wisdom, but another teammate said their focus should be on the mysterious stranger who had saved them. Still confused, Yi asked what had happened. Noticing her other teammates lying unconscious on the ground, she stood up and was immediately hit by the powerful burning warmth of a leftover yang attribute on a nearby tree. She could feel its intense heat even from a distance. The shaggy-haired man then stepped forward, offering to explain what had happened, while she was unconscious. Later that day, back in front of her cousin's apartment, Yi was still trying to understand the incredible events. She couldn't believe that someone so powerful actually existed. Her teammates' words echoed in her mind. He had called the mysterious pioneer a monster. He had described how the vines they couldn't even scratch had been easily pushed back by his power, and how the massive beanstalk had retreated far into the sky, no longer daring to come near them. Such was the overwhelming presence of the man who had saved them. She knew that even though he was long gone, the vine was still calm, a sign of his lingering power. She opened the door to the apartment and was surprised to find Fong Yi there to greet her. He looked at her with concern, noticing that she looked a little pale. Yi quickly pulled herself together, forcing a smile as she brushed off his concern, blaming her tiredness on a long day of studying. Fong Yi accepted her excuse, telling her she had worked hard and should go rest. He offered to order takeout for dinner, and she agreed before heading to her room. Once inside, she collapsed onto her bed, completely exhausted. She knew that breakthroughs were mentally draining, requiring a lot of concentration. She felt more tired than if she had stayed up for a month straight. Lying on her bed and scrolling through her phone, she felt a sense of relief. She was no longer an ordinary person. She wouldn't die from a few all-nighters. She accepted that this constant life-threatening struggle was the fate of a pioneer in a world where things had begun to change. She thought of her cousin's seemingly normal peaceful life and knew that such a life was no longer possible for her. Her quiet thoughts were interrupted by a new message in her pioneer group chat. It was from a user named Jiaolon, the mysterious powerful member who was usually absent. Jiaolon had sent a simple direct message. If there are any more traces of that strong man, please inform me. This was the first time Jiaolan had ever spoken in the group, and it immediately got Yi's attention. She replied, agreeing to the request before asking her own question to the group. She asked if they thought the man who had saved them could be the same one from the Dark River Lava Dragon incident, and if so, why he would have helped them. The group chat immediately lit up with a post about the mysterious high-tier Yang attribute master. The post described his son splitting slash in great detail, telling how the witness had been forced out of the cave by a blast of white-hot light. The author of the post declared with total certainty that no other pioneer in the Xia country could match his power and warned everyone to stay away if they ever met him. Meanwhile, Fong Yi was heading out for the evening on his bicycle. He was confident that after the day's events, his cousin would have let her guard down around him, letting him come and go without making her suspicious. With his new freedom, he had a new mission in mind. It was time to find a suitable carrier for his new desolation attribute. He knew that this power was most compatible with plants, and he pedaled off into the night to begin his search. As he rode through the night, Fong Yi thought about the best way to use his newly acquired desolation attribute. He knew that despite its power, it was still a bad attribute at its core based on destruction and decay. He worried that putting it on his own body could lead to bad reactions. Furthermore, he was concerned that its evil nature might conflict with the good purifying power of his thunder attribute. He decided that the best solution would be to find a carrier for the attribute, something like the strange vine itself. He guessed that the original vine monster had been born when a regular plant sensed the return of rich spiritual energy and chose to evolve, creating the desolation attribute as a way to gather more power. With this in mind, a plan began to form in his mind. With a confident smirk, he knew exactly where he needed to go. He followed a moonlit road, guided by a sign pointing toward the forest park. He arrived at the large urban park and left his bike going into the woods. Under the bright full moon, he walked through a field of vibrant glowing flowers. He knew he needed to find the perfect lucky one, a plant that could create the greatest connection with his own spiritual energy and show a sense of closeness to him. Closing his eyes, he focused, reaching out with his own spiritual energy. A vibrant green aura flowed from him, spreading throughout the forest and covering the plants. He could feel a response from the plants, a wave of their own spiritual energy rising up to meet his. He noted that while their response was a lot, it still wasn't strong enough for what he needed. As Fong Yi continued to send out his spiritual energy, he realized he needed a much stronger response from the plants around him. Suddenly, he stopped, his attention drawn to a specific spot in the forest. There, in the tall grass, a single white flower with a glowing center gently swayed as if calling to him. He wondered if this was the one he had been searching for. He approached it carefully and reached out his finger. As his fingertip touched it, the flower's petals closed around it, and he could feel it absorbing the spiritual energy he was giving off. The flower then bloomed again, seemingly happy, as if it had just had a good meal. Fong Yi knelt beside the flower, a small smile on his face. He noted its strong spirituality. Though it was just a plant, it had reacted to his touch like a greedy puppy, eagerly eating his spiritual energy and then rubbing against his fingers for more. He knew he had found his carrier. Out of the entire forest, this small flower had the strongest reaction to his aura, making it the perfect container for the desolation attribute. He told the flower that it was the chosen one and asked if it was ready. Without waiting for an answer, he unleashed a vortex of green spiritual energy, focusing it entirely on the small white flower. A system window appeared asking for confirmation. Do you want to forcibly implant the desolation attribute into this plant? With his eyes glowing a vibrant green, he gave his consent. A brilliant light erupted from his hand as the flower began to transform, its petals opening into a much larger, more complex, and powerful form.
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.